Hello everybody, I'm in a 911. Yes, I know, again. But look, I just keep getting offered really nice ones that I simply can't turn down. And today's is exceedingly nice. You see, this is a 964. I've driven 964s before. I actually really rather like them. They're one of the 911s that has grown on me the most. But today's 964 isn't quite standard. See, the 911 world and community is a bit odd, really. They can never seem to make their mind up as to whether they're accepting of modified examples or not. Most people will agree that a nice original car is a proper good 911 to have, but then you'll also get people that go really misty-eyed and gooey over something like a Singer. However, if you want to change a couple of bits on your classic 911, oh, the old official Porsche lot, they can run for a bucket of tar and feathers quicker than you would ever believe. I'm doing them a bit of a disservice, really. I know a lot of people in the Porsche clubs that are very nice, decent, friendly, and surprisingly well-balanced individuals. So what's different about this 964? Well, a few things, really. Stan bought it in 2008 as a C4 in its current shade of Guards Red. He's then upgraded it bit by bit and turned it into what could be the ultimate fast road 911. It's got about 300 horsepower now, courtesy of some hot cams and some intake and exhaust mods. I'm going to put that window up a little bit. But the sunroof is staying open. The suspension is Bilstein PSS 10s. You've got an uprated anti-roll bar. You've then got the front calipers from a 993 Turbo, the rear calipers from a 993 C2, and the discs from a 964 RS. The biggest change is to the drivetrain, which is no longer four-wheel drive, it's now two. And it puts its power to the ground through a later gearbox, the G5021. That little 21-bit is significant. It's the gearbox you'd find in an early 993, and it has shorter ratios compared to the later unit that they used. There is also a lightweight flywheel, which combined with this fairly hot cam means that it's a bit of a devil to get off the line. I have stalled it twice already today. Very unusual for me. In fact, it's, I think, the only 2 times I've stalled a car this year. Come on, revs, clutch, there we go. Interior-wise, the car looks pretty standard, and I'm very pleased to see that there are a lot of things that are still in here. The stereo, the aircon, and the sunroof. Power is smooth, it's linear. And in this last week, I've been driving some legendary and iconic drivers' cars. This is absolutely up there with the very best of them. Oh, it moves around and you can play with it a lot. If you put the power down in the middle of a corner, it will try and wash wide, then the back end will try and overtake you. But it talks to you. The steering is classic 911, very, very light. These pedals are extremely offset, more so than I remember them being. And also very, very close together, and that accelerator pedal doesn't look entirely standard either. The most amazing thing about this car is the view out, because you're just surrounded by road. Oh, as you hit about 5,500 RPM, you can really hear that cam take over. Oh, the car sounds wonderful, but not obnoxious. It weighs about 1,300 kilos, and to me, that combination, 300 horsepower, 1,300 kgs, that's about right in a road car. Sure, you can have lighter, but very often that's going to involve some sort of compromise. Sure, I'm sure somebody would be happy to tell me that you could have a Renault Alpine for about 200 kilos less, and that's still a very good road car. Yeah, sure, it is. But this just feels magnificent. Very small as well. Every time I get back in one of these, I forget just how diminutive these early air-cooled 911s are. The real giveaway is when you're trying to be all British and polite, and somebody lets you out at a junction, a rare thing in a Porsche, granted, but in a classic one, not impossible, and you go to thank them. And what happens is, rather than saying thank you, you slap the windscreen, because there is about half a hand. There's just about more than my fingers between the top of the wheel and the windscreen. That's it. This is nowhere near as loud or as harsh as it could well be. I've seen and driven an awful lot of quote-unquote fast road / occasional track builds. The fact is that many of them are just awful. They're just not good. They're unnecessarily loud and harsh. And look, if you're going to take a car to track on a trailer, that's fine. My local track is at least an hour and a half drive for me, meaning that I'm going to spend probably just as much time in my car going to the circuit as I am on the circuit. And so for that very reason, I don't want to compromise the car's livability, its usability. The clutch is very heavy, as they always are on a car like this. You do get used to that flywheel-ish. Nearly. And you may have noticed also these seats are non-standard. They're Recaro pole positions taken from an Audi TT, a TT Sport, I'm quite sure. They're brilliant, absolutely fantastic. They are some of the best seats you could ever put in this kind of car. There is a basic rollover hoop in the vehicle as well, should you decide to get things really badly wrong. But other than getting it off the line being a bit tricky to drive normally, it's a pleasant thing. The car's even got a lot of spec in it as well. You've got a heated front screen, you've got a trip computer. How amazing! Which means that I've got my speed in digital down here. Very handy, and this car is not slow. It's really not. The gearbox is actually really nice to use. Got a hell of a weight behind it. Doesn't feel like an unnaturally short throw, but really positive action. You know exactly when you've slotted a cog home. You can drive through town without waking everybody up as well, which is also very, very nice. I find with all classic 911s, people really do have a lot of love for these cars, and rightly so. There is a lot to love about them. There's even some room up front. Not masses, but enough for an overnight bag or two for a quick weekend away. You're never really going to get golf clubs in this thing with any ease. I did once have a guy comment and moan about the Lotus Evora I'd review, telling me that you couldn't get golf clubs in that, but you could in his 911. But you can get a set of clubs in the back of an Evora, as long as you don't want to have some sort of motorised bag. And he said that you could get it in the 911 because you could put them on the passenger seat. Anyway. When you're at a stop, you can hear that lightweight flywheel hurtling round like a right bag of bolts. But you're not worried about what these cars like to stand still in. You want to know how it goes. The answer is very well indeed. Interestingly, most people would always talk about a classic 911 as having a rear end that you need to worry about. Not the case in this at all. It's the front. This really does want to understeer, and you think it's doing it far earlier than it should until you look down and realise the speed that you're doing. Fortunately, the chassis is extremely communicative. The car this is actually most reminding me of is the Cayman R. I'm not thinking of a 911 when I drive it, it's the Cayman instead, because that had the same sort of feeling of moving around under you, but not in a necessarily disconcerting way. Now, you could get the Cayman a lot more out of shape than you could this without starting to panic, and I'm sure you can throw this around, but I'm not going to be the one to do that. I would potentially say that I'd be happier with gear ratios maybe even shorter than this, but there's a good spread of power and torque. Surprising too, you'd think that maybe a hotter cam would rob the car of some of its low-end go, and I have indeed driven a few modified cars which just felt like they had nothing to give low down, and that made them a little bit less enjoyable on the road, because on the road I'd prefer a good spread of torque over top-end fizz. Yes, I know I have an S2000, I know. The wheel wriggles around in your hand. A bit like a baby. A bit like my niece Skylar. She's wriggling and she's trying to escape, but I still love her very much. Heel and toe isn't quite as easy as I'd like it to be. It's going to take some getting used to. The pedals are ridiculously offset. I forgot how far offset they were, but this setup is obviously tailored to its owner, and that's fine. But I'm not the owner. It's taking some getting used to. The brakes are great. Historically a real 911 strong point, especially from sort of 993 onwards. The turbo was famed for having stoppers that were some of the best on the planet. You're in no doubt whatsoever that they can bring this car to a halt when needed. And really, this car is a lot of fun to hustle. You've got to be on it though. It's not like a modern 911. You can't just switch off and go fast. It does demand attention, but it also rewards. It really does. A little bit of a wobble in the steering under braking. It could be any number of things, but nothing really to worry about. This car feels tight too. No rattles in here, no creaks. Oh, it's so good. It's a proper 911. It's that view of the road, I forgot. I spent the last week driving almost exclusively front engine cars, and you just sat right on the road here. It feels like my old Evora or something like that, or a mid-engine Ferrari in some ways. It's just you, tarmac, that's it. It's fabulous. Visibility is fantastic. A-pillars are pretty much air, so no worries there. This is hugely rewarding. I mean, even at doing 50 mile an hour at the minute, and even in certain corners, you've got to really, be on top of it, know what the car's doing. It's just a constant dialogue. Does on occasion feel a bit like a good friend that's maybe had a pint more coffee than he probably should have done. Most importantly, when you're done thrashing the bejesus out of it, relax and you realise how comfortable these pole position seats are, how well judged that exhaust and intake are. I really did expect it actually to sound somewhat raspier, and I'm interested to see what it's like in the drive-bys. I'm going to have to wait about half an hour. You can have a listen right now. It is a little bit faster and more competent than a regular 964, of course it is, but it hasn't been ruined. If anything, the 911-ness has just been exaggerated. That's a good thing. You could level plenty of criticisms at this car, of course you could, but in all honesty, most of them would be criticisms you could level at any classic 911. Could you have a faster classic 911 than this? Yes, of course you could. But do you need one? No, absolutely not. This is my Goldilocks old 911. It is the biryani that really everybody knows is the superior curry to the fowl, but everybody's just so desperate to impress their mates, they go and do something very stupid. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment below, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you all for the next one. Auf Wiedersehen.